Welcome to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Nicholson, crime scene investigator turned functional health investigator. This podcast is here to share bite-sized episodes and unique interviews on a wide variety of health topics to empower, enlighten, and educate you to live your best, most vibrant life. Disclaimer: all information you hear on this podcast is for information only and constitutes individual opinions of the person speaking. This should not be taken as medical advice. Being a listener of this show does not initiate a practitioner-client relationship between you and the hosts or panelists on this show. Please discuss these topics with your medical professionals before making any changes to your health. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Holistic Health Bites podcast. Today, we're going to have a fun conversation about fertility and infertility causes and things that maybe you didn't know. So I am welcomed with my special guest today, Susan Fox. Welcome, Susan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So will you just tell everybody a little bit about your background, maybe your story, whatever you want people to know about you before we dive into the conversation?
For sure. So I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. That is my degree, and a licensed acupuncturist in the state of California. And for the past 23 years, fertility has been my specialty. So I've been helping women, people, and couples with their struggle with fertility, whether they're trying to conceive naturally or going through the advanced reproductive therapies like egg freezing, IUI, IVF. And it has been clear to me as we have progressed over space and time that a lot of our lifestyle, exposure, and habits are part and parcel of what is causing much of our fertility struggle. Obviously, it's not entirely, but we can certainly help anybody who is thinking of wanting to get pregnant or egg freezing, because that's a big perk in the corporate world, or IVF, to prepare better so they have better outcomes. Because here again, I think that there is a presumption that once you step into that world, you come out with a babe in arms, and it's not a guarantee. But we can improve those. We can improve those odds.
I love that. It's such a great mission because it's such a life and heart-wrenching situation when you so badly want children, and for whatever reason, all the things that we're going to dive into, it's just not easy, and it just doesn't come as simply as maybe we would like. So I would love to let's just dive right in.
Okay,
let's talk about
and you're absolutely right. It is an existential crisis that I am bearing witness to on a regular basis. It's not a mere disappointment. I mean, people's experience of themselves and as human beings is altered for the struggle. Yeah,
for sure. So let's just get right to it. What are some of the things that people let's just start with the things that they may be doing wrong to begin with, even maybe before they ever are trying to get pregnant or think about their fertility, but just what are some of those lifestyle things that people are just missing the mark on?
Yep. I would say that number one thing to be aware of is our exposure to environmental toxins in our food, in our water, in our clothing, in our personal care products. It has become so ubiquitous that we, get the wrinkle resistant, stain resistant, waterproof clothing that, in order to be those things, is coated with endocrine disrupting chemicals that we don't really need. I mean, there are ways to mitigate some of the elements of weather without putting this on our skin day in, day out, and then sleeping on it because we don't want a wrinkle in our sheets overnight. So we're breathing this, for 8 hours. Hopefully we're sleeping 8 hours. So I would say some of it just, and because of this, some of it is occurring when we are in utero. So when you think about, by the time a person is thinking, oh, I would like to, maybe get pregnant, maybe have a baby, that's oftentimes 30 plus years of being exposed to this on a daily basis. This was not the case 50 years ago. And so cleaning up some of that, being aware of, what are you wearing organic cotton, natural dye, and it doesn't have to be cotton. It can be silk or hemp or linens, but, really try to stay clear of the polyesters and all of these other things. And then with our personal care products, we used to use soap And now we use all kinds of things that are laden with parabens and phthalates. And here again, these are the things that are not only cancer causing in the larger scheme of things, but more directly are endocrine disruptors. And so we don't need to have those pretty painted nails in order to have lovely hands that do a fine job of everything they're supposed to be doing. We don't need to be brushing our teeth with something that has our mouth feel minty fresh, but there's not a hint of mint in there. It's all chemicals, right, going directly into our bloodstream. So that level of awareness, I think, is important. Obviously, the eating organic and the eating, fresh if possible, or fresh frozen if not possible, so that we're not also eating, PBAs out of the can or the processed food and things like that.
Yeah, there's so many things there. And I think one of the easiest things that I've always told my clients is because it can be a little overwhelming. You look at some of these labels, if they even have them. A lot of our personal care products and home cleaning products don't even have labels. We don't even know what's in them. But one of the
Absolutely.
easiest things to look for is fragrances.
Yes.
If there's any fragrance added, unless it says organic essential oils,
Mm-hmm.
it's a toxic chemical concoction of who knows what. And so
Exactly.
that's one really easy thing to just look at your products. And if it has a fragrance or a perfume added, toss
Mm-hmm.
it, get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the
I
easiest things to find
couldn't
in those
agree
products.
more. I had a conversation with a scientist whose business is environmental testing, at home environmental testing. It's Million Marker. I'll give a plug for Dr. Hua.
Nice.
Um, and she said the very same thing. She said, if there's anything that says fragrances, there's not enough flowers on the planet to give us all of these fragrances that we think we're getting. And they use the word natural, but natural doesn't mean healthy. Natural, we've got so much sort of mistaken nomenclature in our marketing that we're duped a little bit in thinking, oh, this is lavender scented, so they probably picked the lavender from a lovely organic farm. Well, no, they didn't
No,
probably.
probably doesn't have any lavender in it at
Exactly,
all.
exactly. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
So I
so
would say
frustrating.
that's probably one of the easiest thing, simplest. I won't say easiest because, as
Yeah,
you say, and you did mention reading labels. In an ideal world, we wouldn't read labels for food anyway, because we're eating something that we know this has been picked from the tree, pulled from the ground. That egg was taken out from that chicken's bottom, or that was the chicken. So trying to stay away from those center aisles, and use them sparingly, and when we need to use them, look for organic, so that you can minimize the toxic exposure. We are designed to detox. We're just not designed to detox this level of toxic exposure.
yeah. Yeah, and I think you started off with an aspect that I think a lot of people are just completely not aware of, which is the clothing. I think this is a more emerging thing that frankly I didn't even know about until more recent years. I knew about cookware and, cooking in plastics and personal care products and cleaning care products and some of the like low-hanging fruit when it comes to
Mhm.
toxins.
Mhm.
But I had no idea until relatively recently the
Mhm.
level of BPA in our
Mhm.
clothing and
Mhm.
the
And
level of just
formaldehyde in our
these
clothing.
toxic chemicals that are
Mhm.
up against our skin that especially like undergarments or pants or things like that are up against, sensitive areas of the body
Mhm.
every
Yep.
day, all
Yep.
day long. The
Yep.
chemicals that are in your underwear are it's
Mm-hmm.
just insane. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think this is a whole new area that people really need to focus on. And even more so if you're trying to get pregnant, because you're literally touching the parts that matter,
Exactly.
the most when it comes to
Exactly.
fertility.
And
So
sweating. So you're opening
yeah.
up your skin and your bloodstream to absorb these little, the breakdown of these microplastics that just, cross that skin barrier, and, there you go. So yes, it's true. And ironically, maybe it's not so ironic, but I'm going to keep that term. Much of the rest of the Western world are banning a lot of these products, but it's not happened yet here in our country. So the onus is on us to say we're not buying that, and
Yep.
eventually, being the you know consumer buyer beware, and then not buying it, the shift will happen. It's not going to happen if we keep going to that same row of shampoo and toothpaste and deodorant line and picking up those same conglomerate purchases, again, there's no incentive for them to make the change.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have to vote with our dollars and our feet. So we have to choose
Absolutely.
wisely with where we spend our money and
Absolutely.
our time. So for sure, I agree with
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah.
let's pivot a little bit more, maybe out of the toxins and
Yes.
talk about some other things. Because I know toxins is, of course, a huge thing, but it can
Mhm.
also feel like ugh, there's nothing I can do about it. They're everywhere.
Right.
And so,
Right.
what are some other things that people can focus on? And we've talked a little bit
Certainly.
about specific foods and some of that, but what are
Yep.
some of the
So
other things?
I refer to the four pillars. So nutrition, we just kind of ticked that off, organic, fresh, flash frozen, hydration. We do need to consume ample levels of clean water. So, depending upon where you live and where your water source is, you may want to, find a good filtered water or do a distillation process at home and then add back your minerals, because we're made of water. So we don't have enough water, we can't clean our debris. Circulation is key, right? So in the area of fertility, I espouse moderate movement, so that the pelvic bowl is not being sort of crunched up and torqued and twisted, but walking, jogging, if that is your thing, swimming, yoga, but carefully, Pilates, but carefully, because here again, if you don't have body awareness, you can have a lot of what's called the Valsalva push, where you're pushing down on your pelvic bowl and you're not letting that circulation get back in. I'm a fan for the fertility time frame of using passive circulations with infrared and or a TENS unit. We call it TIAs, transcutaneous electrical acupoint stimulation, to just really just while you're relaxing. If you're a Netflix watcher, while you're whatever relaxation you're doing, or what even frankly while you're at the computer, but it would be nice to be in a more relaxed state than that. Just let that deeper penetration of warmth and circulation get to the blood vessels that are perfusing to your ovaries and uterus, so that those organs are healthier because they've had their nutrition and their hydration, and they can get this good circulation and perform better to the hormonal signaling that is coming throughout the 4 week, ideally, menstrual cycle.
Right. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So,
And a caveat being, when should someone be interested in utilizing some of these, there is a time frame within which to do it, from the end of menstrual bleed to ovulation, not during a bleed and not post ovulation in a month that one has tried to conceive.
okay, that's it. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Definitely don't
Yeah.
want to add disruptions to the process.
Right.
So that
And
makes sense.
finally, sleep, right? I mean, so that's the fourth pillar, right? But this is something that we are, I think, finally wrapping our heads around, the importance of sleep as a prescription. In the Chinese medicine clock, it's long been ascribed that the hours between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., no surprise there, are when we need to be asleep so that the organs of detoxification can do their job. And now we know that how we wake up and when we wake up will dictate how and when we fall asleep, so that our circadian and hormonal flow and rhythms are intact and flowing.
Yeah, these things are so interconnected. I see so many people that are like, I feel amazing. I only sleep 5 hours a night, but I have all these, unrelated issues. And yet
Mhm.
they're not unrelated. They really are all connected. If your sleep is disrupted and therefore your circadian rhythm is disrupted, your hunger hormones will be messed up. Your appetite level in general will be messed up. Your immune system will be messed up. Your
Mhm.
thyroid will be messed up. Like all of these things are connected, even though you might not feel it. You might feel fine
Right.
from a sleep standpoint or from a
Right.
rested standpoint,
Right.
but you are impacting all of these internal systems that are affecting other internal systems that affect other internal systems. And it's just one
Absolutely.
big domino.
Absolutely. And if you're not feeling it now, there will be a pay the piper moment, because we are organic beings ourselves, and there will be a consequence. It's just inevitable. So, why not? Why wait until either a lab value has changed or a symptom or sign has changed to the point where now you've got to recover back to zero in order to start feeling well again? Like, make those changes now so that you don't have to get to that point.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
as a society, we're so focused on how we feel that
Mhm.
we often wait until it's far too late and
Mhm.
much more difficult, if
Mhm.
possible at all, to reverse these things. And if we
Yeah.
could just get back on track before it
Mhm.
becomes something we actually feel or like you said, see on a lab test,
Yeah.
then, it's much easier. Prevention is way easier than reversal for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes I was go so far as to say sometimes we are almost more enamored with how we look than how we feel. And how we feel has this filter of how we think we look. So we're really not even feeling completely. And that brings us to, that sort of self-care as healthcare, right? Take some time to reflect. You don't need to go meditate on a mountain. You're welcome to do that, but just take some time to reflect, because here again, we each have a purpose for being, alive, breathing, and contributing human beings. Just take a bit of time to say, what is this? What am I doing? What do I want to do? And am I on that path? And if not, how can I get there? Not in a stressful way, but more of a reflective, contemplative way, so that it becomes a creative endeavor or expression, as opposed to I must get there or else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so many of us have gotten just used to feeling terrible that it's just normal and we don't even recognize how bad we actually feel.
Right.
We just
Right.
attribute it to getting older or to, some arbitrary event that passed, or that,
Mm-hmm.
some recent, like we just came through the holidays. Well, I'm just more stiff and sore because of the things I ate over the holidays. Yeah, that might be true,
Mm-hmm.
but it might also be true that you have underlying metabolic disorders that are contributing to arthritis development and, all these other
Or
actual
fertility,
conditions that are
for that
developing.
matter. Or fertility, for that matter. I was
Yeah.
listening to a wonderful reproductive endocrinologist share the science of how I would say the metabolic dysregulated person tends to be the polycystic ovarian person, and that they are seeing the products of metabolic dysregulation, elevated sugars, elevated inflammatory markers in the follicular fluid of that egg that is about to be ovulated. So that's where I say it can start even before in utero. So
Yep.
let's clean it up now, so we're giving ourselves and our future generations, our progeny and our future generations, a better chance.
Yeah. And if you
Mhm.
go into a pregnancy already having insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, any of these metabolic disorders, not only are you going to have a much harder time just because your metabolic health is suffering, and so your overall body is suffering, you're going to have more pain, you're going to have more just issues, more risk of hypertension, more risk
Mhm.
of all of the pregnancy complications,
Mhm.
and gestational diabetes risk goes up. And then you also cause all of that for your baby.
Right.
Is that
Right.
really the path you want them to go down? Do you
Right.
really want them behind the eight ball before they're even developed?
Before their first breath. Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, this really is a big deal. And this isn't all
Mhm.
on the mom. All
Mhm.
of this applies to the dad as well,
Mhm.
because, the
It
sperm is
does,
being
and yet
developed every day.
yeah, it definitely applies to the dad as well, because mismanagement of one's health as a male, or as one with sperm, is going to affect his morphology, which will contribute to the DNA sort of composite of this child. That being said, I'm sorry to say, people who are going to be carrying a child, the onus is on us a little bit
Yes.
more. We have 9 months of duty, and then a lifetime of duty. So it's I would actually say it is the luck of the draw, because I feel that we are very fortunate to be able to be the ones to carry life and to foster life that way. So
Yeah. So the onus is
let's
on the partner to
rise.
help support that.
For sure. For
Make it
sure.
easy.
Yes.
Don't make it harder. Don't
Yes,
bring ice
don't
cream home. Don't bring
exactly. Don't
cookies
come
home.
home with pizza and beer, and
Yes.
want to share it, because there
Right.
is that's a psychological habit
Yeah.
that tends to happen in sort of couple or nuclear arrangements, where I'll do it if you do it,
Mhm.
and then we're doing it together, so we're okay, but of course then we're agreeing to be unhealthy together. So maybe
Yeah.
we're at the first of the year. I hope that I'm not. I hope that the timing of this is not is not going to come out in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
But right today we're at the first of the year. It's a great time not to make resolutions, because those are made to be broken, but to make intentions for ourselves, so that we
Yeah.
can really just begin today to do what we can today, knowing that today's progress will foster tomorrow's as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's work together to be healthier, not unhealthier. So I think that's a great thing. And the more
exactly.
people we can surround ourselves with that are on that same path, the easier it will be.
Exactly.
because the law of reciprocity works both ways. So if somebody brings you junk, you feel obligated to eat it, or
Hmm.
you feel obligated to eat it with them.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
like the same is true if they're not indulging, you're far less likely to indulge. So
Exactly.
surround
Exactly.
yourself by people that are doing the same things as you are, that have the same goals, that understand the mission, that aren't going to make it harder for you.
And maybe do a social media detox
Yes.
where, right, where,
Yes.
where, it's not to say go away from social media. It has so much value to giving us information, but be judicious as to, who are you following? What are they offering? Does it serve you to be, having this in your feed, which means in your brain feed every day, for months on end, maybe it does require taking a detox day or more so that you can just, look at the sky, take a deeper breath, have that extra glass of water as opposed to the glass of wine while you're scrolling through the feed. And you really go for that social media detox.
Yeah, I would add all media to that. Turn the
Media
news
there.
off too. Stop reading the
Yeah,
newspapers
yeah,
and the
right.
news feeds. Yeah,
Good
all
point.
the
Good
things.
point. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what are some other things that people can start implementing if they're planning to get pregnant, or maybe they
Mhm.
already are? What are some of the
Mhm.
things that they can really start doing to make sure that it's going to be successful?
Right, right. Well, I would say for plan, in addition to, doing the right things lifestyle wise, take the right supplementation. Unfortunately, we live in a country that has no requirements for that labels contain, I mean, the ingredient that supplements contain what the labels say, and so often testing is done and to demonstrate that there's nothing of that product that it claims to have, or the bioavailability isn't there. So you're taking it and getting just expensive excretions. So a good prenatal is important, of course, because we need to prevent, the low vitamin, Bs that would create a spina bifida scenario. I would say with a good prenatal, try to see that prenatal has either what's called a methylated folic acid or folate, because there is a certain population, and you can take the test to find out if you are that population with the MTHFR gene mutation that cannot translate folic acid to folate. So you're taking your folic acid until the cows come home, and you don't have a bit to donate to this growing embryo fetus. For preconception care, there are supplements that really help with mitochondrial support. Again, high quality coenzyme Q10. You want that to be from a resource that is called Kaneka, because that is actually what tends to be most bioavailable. And then a high quality, because it's fish and fish oil derived from fish, and we want to make sure that fish is a healthy fish, a high quality DHA for fetal brain development. So that would be the basic bundle that I would say. And then obviously, depending upon what's going on with that person, if she or they have access to testing thyroid, to testing vitamin D, to testing iron and ferritin to rule out any of these things that could be implicated in an early pregnancy loss. Get those tested, get those supplemented if and as needed. Don't just take them, because taking them when you don't need them is as harmful as not taking them when you do need them.
Yeah. So on the fish oil, I completely agree with you. And really, with all the supplements, you really do need to know what's in them and the reputable products. What's
Mhm.
your stance on actually eating the fish during
Oh,
pregnancy?
well, I would say certainly, a wild caught salmon, or,
Okay.
a healthy, oily fish. Here again, regrettably, our waters are polluted. So, we have to be careful. And I've not yet met a person who wants to eat enough fish to get this, the dosage of the 400 milligrams DHA. So definitely eat the wild caught salmon to your heart's content. But I would say during the preconception and prenatal time, intend to supplement as well.
Okay.
Obviously, caveat being, I defer to your OBGYN or your reproductive endocrinologist. I am not prescribing anything out here
Yeah.
in the land of podcasting.
Right. Okay. And then would there be anything special that you would recommend for someone who has been struggling with fertility issues and
Hmm.
is working on all these things to repair metabolic health and is,
Hmm.
just really struggling to get back
Yeah.
on track? Or is there anything special you would say to that person who is already having problems?
Yeah. Well, yes, without self-promoting, I would say get to a specialist. Don't let too much time wait because there could be something at play that can be either, that can have an intervention either medically, if it could be a structural issue where sperm can't meet egg, then there's no amount of supplement or healthy lifestyle that's going to get sperm to meet egg. You might be that candidate for either a procedure or an IVF to get sperm to meet egg in vitro. So get the testing done. Begin with a specialist. Oftentimes it is beginning with your OB, but sometimes that OB isn't a fertility specialist. He or she is who you see once that positive pregnancy has happened. As I say, not trying to promote myself, but people like myself who've been doing this for 20 plus years have the resources available to, do a coaching call to just say, you don't have to come see me. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. You can call me from, Oklahoma, and I can say to you, have you had these tests done? Go see your OB or your reproductive specialist and, see if he or she can perform these for you. Because, time can be of the essence, and time is just feels like an enemy when you want to have that positive pregnancy test, and yet another cycle up to 3 months, 6 months, a year goes by. It becomes very, very psychologically
Yeah.
difficult. Yeah.
And so are the tests that you would be asking them about or asking them to see if they can get or offering to do for them, would that be, is it like lab testing or is it
Lab
more like
testing.
ultrasound procedural kind of tests?
It would begin with lab testing because lab
Okay.
testing could flag whether or not there is a physiological reason. So, and it's an easy test to get, right? You just go get your lab draw. And if those tests come back clean as a whistle, then yes, you would go in for some diagnostic testing with a
Okay.
with a medical doctor who could go in and make sure tubes are patent and there's no septum in the uterus and so on, or there's no endometriosis or
Right.
endometrioma on the ovary itself.
Okay.
But if we can identify something even in the labs that is a physiological imbalance, oftentimes we can make that change. That will allow for systems to begin working again. Our bodies really are brilliant, and they do
Yeah.
want to work again when given the right tools and environment
Yep.
with which to do so. So that's always a good start because, even if one finds herself or themselves going into advanced reproductive therapies, to have improved your physiology beforehand is going to improve your successful outcome, because it is not just about the quantity of eggs that are being harvested and put into the in vitro process. It's about the quality. And that's where each of us can make the difference. So if there's nothing else you hear from this conversation, it is quality over quantity. And I say that because I want you to be empowered, knowing that you can make those changes to improve your egg quality and your uterine receptivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about someone who has been able to get pregnant, but
Mhm.
isn't able to maintain that pregnancy.
Mhm.
Because that's
Mhm.
also part of the fertility picture.
Absolutely.
It's part of that whole
Recurrent
reproductive.
pregnancy
So
loss is a medical diagnosis.
yeah.
So here again, we would look to labs to see, can we see, is there low progesterone after, in the luteal phase? If so, uh, some would argue that means that egg itself was not viable. I argue against that argument because I say, let's find out. Let's give that egg to embryo to fetus a fighting chance by just supplementing with some progesterone. And
Okay.
that would be your medical doctor who could prescribe that in the right doses. And there's really no downside, in my opinion, to taking progesterone for that 2-week wait. And if there is known low progesterone, taking it through that first 8 to 9 weeks of pregnancy to just make sure that uterine lining is intact and it won't degrade, so the embryo has a chance to develop into its trophoblast and create its own placenta, and the rest is, it's good on its own. It doesn't need any more progesterone.
Yeah.
I would say the other thing that can contribute to an early pregnancy loss would be low vitamin D. It is so common to see low vitamin D. If there's low vitamin D, it may not be as simple as supplementing with vitamin D, but that's a good start. You also want to look to inflammatory processes. What's causing that vitamin D to go wonky? It's, unless you're living in an area where it's dark all the time and you're not getting any sunlight, our healthy food and so forth, should give us ample vitamin D, and a little bit of supplementation should help. But with a deeper dive of investigation, we want to make sure there's not an underlying inflammatory process. And that's where someone like yourself can help identify, rule out, and help this person make changes. I would also say, look to make sure that there's not a low-grade anemia, low iron or ferritin, because that here again is a common reason for early pregnancy loss, because a person naturally goes anemic during her pregnancy as she's growing more blood so quickly. So if she's starting out, or they are starting out a little anemic, then it's going to be there's a risk of just not having enough hemoglobin or ferritin to support the pregnancy. So those are the few tests that I would say, let's make sure that those are fine first.
Yeah. And then you can be very strategic in how you handle the specific problem rather than just throwing random iron supplements or vitamin D supplements at someone. You can actually test and strategically target the thing that's actually out of whack. I think that's a good strategy, and my favorite use of using tests as well, so that we're not just guessing, but we're being very strategic and not putting people on things that they don't need to be on. Because like you said earlier, too much of a lot of these things are just as bad or worse than not having enough. So
vitamin D is a hormone. High levels can be toxic.
Yeah.
Excess iron is toxic. So don't just go taking these things because you heard us talking about it. And that is something that I often see in my private practices. I have to take people off supplements that have sort of just come across their awareness. And so they're taking prenatal and then extra Bs and then extra iron, and I say, why? And they go, well, because I read it somewhere, or a group said I should, and I say, well, it could be the very thing that is your problem. So we don't
want to be adding toxicity even with good things. So that's a good
Test,
point.
don't guess, I think is that adage that I've heard before.
Yeah, I love it. I want to circle back to the prenatal. When do you recommend starting a prenatal? Because it's really prenatal, so it should be before you're getting pregnant, right?
Right. And I actually just delineate preconception care to prenatal care. So preconception care, I would say, to the best of your ability, because I don't want to have anybody panic, at least 3 months before you try to conceive, because the 3-month, 90 to 120 day time frame is referred to as folliculogenesis, the time from which an egg goes from its primordial pool, which means we don't know. It's somewhere in there. It's the the galaxy inside, to then it comes forward to its up to its antral phase. I won't label all of the phases, but that's a 90 to a 120 day time frame. So you can have a beneficial impact every cycle along the way. If you get pregnant that first month, cool. You're taking your prenatals anyway. If you don't get pregnant until that second or third month, also cool, because you've had all of this time to give the nutrient-rich blood flow to your ovaries and the follicles within and the eggs within.
And then do you continue that on if you are pregnant, or should you switch it up once you're pregnant?
There is a difference between what you take for preconception and what you take for prenatal. You continue with your prenatal and your DHA. Okay. You stop CoQ10, and I don't know what else you might be taking out there, but I would say consult with someone, because much of what, for instance, CoQ10 is for improving and enhancing mitochondrial function. We don't necessarily want to have an influence on pushing mitochondrial function on an embryo that is mitosing perfectly well. It doesn't need a push. So let's just take these things away. And frankly, oftentimes the person is not feeling so great anyway. So minimizing the amount of swallow is a gift.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would your strategies change any if it's a subsequent pregnancy? They've already got children and they're having another child, or even potentially multiples. Would any of your strategies change?
Well, the strategy that would change back to the recurrent pregnancy loss is that I would want to make sure that there wasn't an autoimmunity condition that had developed in that sort of prenatal to postpartum time frame, um, because it's common. Hashimoto's autoimmune hypothyroid is common. So I would want to look for that. And if that were so, if that were present, if those antibodies were present, I would be pretty bossy pants about saying, let's get rid of gluten because it is a known trigger for the autoimmune uh, function, if you will, the autoimmune exacerbation or amplification. And in some cases, I'd say get rid of soy because that also can trigger. And for that person, I would say get yourself to your OBGYN or your reproductive specialist and get a low dose thyroid because it is important to have a constant, steady level of thyroid in one's body during pregnancy. If it dips too low, there's the risk of loss.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but I would say, if for, subsequent pregnancy is yet another pregnancy. So there aren't a whole lot of changes that I make unless I see something that's come up as being the cause for why that person is having difficulty getting and staying pregnant.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Any kind of parting words, anything you'd like to wrap this up with?
Well, thank you. As I say, Chinese medicine doc, my filter is through the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. I designed a quiz that really helps a person identify where they may tend to go out of balance. We go out of balance differently depending upon our constitution, and our constitution is encapsulated in this element persona, if you will, or organ system. So I have a quiz, if I may offer it. It's called yourfertilityquiz.com. Pretty easy, yourfertilityquiz.com. And it will take you through a series of questions, which will generate a report for you, which will generate, kind of a series of emails that give some of these tips that we talked about. So for the person, for instance, who might be more of the wood element, my tips would be more about, movement, getting that chi is what we refer to, getting that chi moving, because when it's stagnant, we get depressed, we get irritable, we get road rage. Or the person who tends more to be the lung element, when that's out of balance, they may find themselves more, sort of collapsed and grief stricken. The person who is more fire element may find themselves, going out and partying too much because they want to escape the reflection of that this is a difficult moment for them. So I offer that to anybody listening if they want to learn more about what their element might be, and then some things they can do to help get back into balance.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
think quizzes are so fun and they're such a great way to get some education without feeling like you need a textbook or you need,
Exactly.
this big long thing. So I think that's a great way to
Exactly,
do it.
exactly. And it's true. Quizzes can be fun, but I promise this isn't going to turn you into a tree or water or
Your favorite superstar.
because I've taken some quizzes and I think, well, that was not necessarily the best use of my time.
Right.
It was fun, but it was
Yeah.
but I think this one you'll find it to be beneficial and useful.
Good, good. I
Yeah.
love it. We'll definitely link that up in the show notes for anybody that
Thank you.
wants to find you. And, is there somewhere else that they can just, find you
Yes.
if they want to learn more
Yes.
about your work or they want to
Mhm.
schedule a consultation?
Absolutely. So my private practice is drsusanfox.com, drsusan fox.com. And then I do offer, through this whole time that we're in our indoors and not able to get out to see our providers, I developed an online course that has a lot of DIY applications for, obviously I'm not going to have you put needles in yourself for acupuncture, but as I say, they're acupoint stimulation techniques and protocols that I've designed. I've got the devices, I've got the videos that explain exactly how to use the devices. There are qigong exercises for the different phases of your menstrual cycle. There are mind-body meditations that, when using headphones, you get this subliminal binaural beat that really helps that brain shift from its sometimes deeply embedded, is this ever going to happen, fearful mindset, to actually, I feel uplifted and I'm optimistic as a result of having engaged in this discipline for a bit.
I love that. Binaural beats
And
are such a powerful way to calm the
absolutely.
mind or
Yeah,
get in the right state of mind, depending on what you're trying
absolutely.
to
I
do.
kind of say it's like jumping the cable of your on your brain. You've got a
Yeah.
cable that's laid deeply and it's kind of hard to get out of it, but the binaural beat will help you jump that cable and design a new one.
Yeah.
And that company, that website, by the way, is called healthuniversity.co. And the U is spelled Y-O-U, Health Y-O-U University, as in the University of You,
Mhm.
.co.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love that. And for your private practice, is that strictly just to local people near you, or is
It
that
is
also?
mostly to local people near me.
Okay.
Yes, I mean I do some video consults, but for the most part, it's sort of in person
Yeah.
consultation and treatment. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
asking.
much for sharing
Oh,
all of your wisdom
it's
today and
been my
all of
pleasure.
your
It's been
application.
I could talk about this until the cows come home or until the babies arrive.
You're right.
So
I love
thank
it.
you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Such a powerful thing to focus on. And I know you've had lots and lots and lots of success stories. So thank
I'm
you so much for
grateful to
sharing
say
all of
yes.
this info with everybody today.
Thank
And
you.
to all the listeners, we'll catch you again on future episodes. Did you know I also work one-on-one with clients? I approach solving health challenges like I approached solving crimes by conducting a thorough investigation into your case. Sadly, hundreds of millions of people in the US have insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes, and the vast majority have no idea. I'm here to fix that. If you struggle with low energy, stubborn weight, hypertension, sleep disturbances, or any other undesired symptoms, let's talk. All you have to do is schedule a free call. The link will be in the show notes. And no, you do not need to live near me.